Hello and welcome to Raider HQ After Dark. I'm your host, Raider. And in today's video, what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about the spine, the neck, and the back. And we're going to be talking about intervertebral disc syndrome, or as it's otherwise known as IVDS. Now, in this video, what I'm not going to be doing is I'm not going to be showing you how the normal spinal conditions for the neck and the back are rated because I've already done a video on that. So the IVDS condition can either be rated under the normal schedule, spinal scheduler, at which point in time, if that's the case for you, then you will go back to that other video and you will review that. However, part of the reason why people wanted me to do a video on this is because there's an alternative way that IVDS itself can be rated. It has its own separate rating scheduler. And I'm going to apologize if you can hear my dog chewing on a bone right now. She is being naughty and she will not stop, and she is the boss. So that's just happening. So let's go on and let's move on. This is going to be a slideshow, so it's death by PowerPoint. But I think you're going to be really, the next slide is going to be really powerful for you guys. Oh, it says, please like and subscribe. It's probably the most important thing I say today. I'm just joking. Just joking. So what I want to, before I go into this slide, one of the things that I wanted to say is that IVDS, intervertebral disc syndrome, has it's very unique in the fact that there is a medical approach that your doctors and the CMP examiners have towards this condition. And then there is a completely separate set of rules for the raters on how they rate it. So you can have IVDS medically diagnosed and also at the exact same time not have it be what you're service connected for. It would be service connected under something else. And that would be seen as legitimate by the VBA. Now, if you needed it to be, or if if your medical evidence shows that you're more advantageous to be under the intervertebral disc syndrome and you have the medical diagnosis, you might need to go to the Board of Veterans Appeals, the BVA, and try to appeal a denial that way, or try to re-adjudicate a prior rating decision in which they, based upon the VBA's interpretation, based upon the M21, you might find a more favorable outcome through the board on that one. But I just wanted to point that out. Okay, so getting into the manual references for IVDS. So IVDS is now this is the medical terminology right here. This is the medical side of the fence. Is IVDS can fall under any of these diagnoses here. Slipped or herniated disc, that's a form of IVDS. Ruptured disc, prolapsed disc, bulging or protruded disc. Degenerative disc disease, that's what DDD means medically. Sciatica, which is odd because that's a neurological thing, right? So that's a form of radiculopathy, is sciatica. But having sciatica could show that you have IVDS medically. Discogenic pain syndrome, herniated nucleus pulpsure, and pinched nerve. So all of these things medically can qualify for a diagnosis medically, and I'm going to say that because there's a separation here, that medically you could have IVDS. Okay, so now I've copied and pasted some of the 38 CFR. Now we're moving into the rater's interpretation of it. Okay, so it says 5243 is intervertebral disc syndrome. That's the diagnostic code for this particular condition. So the rater assigns the diagnostic code of 5243 only. Now this is key. Remember whenever I was talking about the 38 CFRs and how things are written in the manual, the VBA staff, whenever it says only, they can't buck that. We have to show evidence of it to be true in order for us to assign this particular code to it. Only when there is disc herniation with compression and or irritation of the adjacent nerve root, which they're asking a lot of a non-medical person. So if you're filling out like a private DBQ or you're filling out, like your medical records, you're trying to talk to your doctor to strengthen your claim, like I've told you guys to do, you need to have them talk about disc herniation with compression and or irritation of the adjacent nerve root. It does not matter if it says intervertebral disc syndrome on your diagnostic code by the VA. It doesn't even matter if it says it on the DBQ. Unless disc herniation and compression and or irritation of the adjacent nerve root is found, we will not assign 5243. What we'll do instead is we'll assign 5242. Now, that gets rated under, it's degenerative disc disease. It gets rated under the normal scheduler. So if you're a veteran who your symptoms, your unique symptoms and fact pattern of how your treatment's going would be more beneficial under the intervertebral disc syndrome, the unique rating uh, scheduler for that, then you need to be mindful of this particular part in the 38 CFR. Moving on. Evaluate intervertebral disc syndrome preoperatively or postoperatively, either under the general rating formula, right? And that's like I had said beforehand, the general rating formula allows the rater to separately grant neurological symptoms like sciatica or sciatic nerve or femoral nerve radiculopathy type stuff. And injuries of the spine under the rating. Okay. Either under that or we can do the intervertebral disc rating formula, which I will show you here in a few minutes. Now, what makes the difference here? This or right here. So it's either this side of the or it's that side of the or. It's based upon incapacitating episodes. And whichever method results in the higher evaluation when all disabilities are combined under 4.25. 4.25 just means like you take everything and just combine it together. It's similar to 38 CFR 4.7 in that respect. So the way the rater does it is, like, let's say that you do have factual 5243 intervertebral disc syndrome per the rater's, um, you know, definition. What would happen is the rater would uh, use the evaluation builder, and we would do a mock rating. And what would happen is we would rate it under the general formula, breaking out the separately granted radiculopathies. And then we would combine those together and see what percentage you got. And then if you had incapacitating episodes which meet criteria, we would rate you under the injuries of the spine under the intervertebral disc syndrome, where we rate you under that particular formula, not separately evaluating the radiculopathy. They would be combined into one, the spine and the radiculopathy would be combined into one, and you would be rated based upon your incapacitating episodes. So we would do that separately, and then we would pick the higher of the two, and that's the one you get. And then in the future, if you get reevaluated, and let's say that the other method is higher for you to break them out, like to have the spine separately rated from the radiculopathies, then you can do that. You're not totally locked into one path or the other. So just keep that in mind. It's based upon the manifestation of your symptoms during whatever, increase you're doing. So keep in mind that intervertebral disc syndrome can flip-flop back and forth between having the radiculopathy separately granted or all combined into one. So don't freak out if you see it. However, now this is a tip. This is very important, guys. Actually, let me do a banner here for very important. Okay, so it's very important that anytime that you're getting intervertebral disc syndrome review or evaluated, and you do have the incapacitating episodes that qualify you potentially for the separate rating formula, you need to have somebody review that to make sure that the actual higher of the two got picked. because this is not something that raters are used to doing on a normal basis. It's actually quite rare. So if you're somebody that actually qualifies for this, it would behoove you to double check their work, right? To make sure that you got the maximum benefit. Now, what do I mean by that? Maybe go to a VSO, maybe talk to, like just review passively and just make sure that everything lines up with your evidence. Especially if you're somebody that has incapacitating episodes that meet the criteria. You want to just double check that it was done right. But let's move on. So, this is the formula for rating intervertebral disc syndrome based upon incapacitating episodes. So, as you see, you can get up to 60% with this. Um, and I'll be honest with you that typically you will only be rated for, like, you know how I said that the general rating formula gets used and we separately grant out, or separately, yeah, grant out the other radiculopathies? If you're at 10%, typically the general rating scheduler wins, because you get 10% for your back typically if you have painful motion, and then if you have radiculopathy in one or both of your legs, that's an additional 10%. So typically, even if this is true, we would pick the the general rating scheduler over this one, because this one, 10% is almost never beats the general rating. But let me go down here to the notes first, because there's some caveats before we can actually apply this. So, note one: for the purposes of evaluating under diagnostic code 5243, an incapacitating episode is a period of acute signs or symptoms due to the intervertebral disc syndrome. And now this is key. Like, this is where you're going to disagree. Like, a lot of you are going to be upset. It requires bed rest prescribed by a physician and treatment by a physician. So why am I going to say you're going to be upset by this? Well, because it can't be the CMP examiner who does this. The CMP examiner cannot be the one that prescribes the bed rest. So if you can't prove that you have the bed rest prior to the CMP examination, even if the examiner checks the box for the prescribed, incapacitating episodes, we won't count it, because it has to be physically prescribed. And if you've ever seen any kind of DBQ, there is a disclaimer on there that says this is for evaluation, but not for treatment. This is not for treatment purposes. So they can't just go, oh, yeah, it's prescribed. No. You have to have that separately done by a separate physician that sees you on a basis. An examiner cannot check this box. No matter how much you want them to be able to, it will not count. It does not count. That it's not a thing. So this is a huge part of this. This has to be true before we even start talking about anything else, because if it's not true, we're just going to rate you under the normal rating scheduler. Okay. You will not get rated under this. Now, note two: if an intervertebral disc syndrome is present in more than one spinal segment. Now, what this means: neck and the rest of your back. You know how they can separately grant the cervical spine from the rest of the spine? That's what this is talking about. So, we would provide that the effects in each spine segment are clearly distinct. As long as that's medically true, and the examiner can weigh in on this. This part's fine for the examiner to weigh in on and say, no, 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 it's distinct, that their cervical incapacitating episodes and their thoracolumbar incapacitating episodes are separate and distinctly separate. If that's the case, then we can evaluate each segment based upon incapacitating episodes or under the general rule. What does that mean? Like, why do we care about this? Well, we care about this is because you could have 6 weeks of incapacitating episodes of your thoracolumbar spine that we grant at 60%, and you can have separately 6 weeks of your neck causing you incapacitating episodes, and you get 60% for that too. It's not pyramiding. That's what I mean. It's just basically not pyramiding. So they don't interfere with each other as long as they are clearly distinct from each other. Like they're not like, like happening at the same time. They're distinct separations in the incapacitating episodes. So let's go through how this is rated. So once again, incapacitating episodes, no separate ratings for radiculopathy. I can't say this enough. You cannot get this and separate ratings for radiculopathy. But we talked about this, the 10%. So a doctor prescribes bed rest or demonstrates that there's incapacitating episodes having a total duration of at least 1 week but less than 2 weeks in the last year. 20%, totaling at least 2 weeks but less than 4 weeks past year. And we just keep going up, 4 and 6 over the past year. And then at least 6 weeks during the past 12 months. Now, I'm going to say that some of you might be cheeky and try to think that a surgery counts as an incapacitating episode for this. And I'm going to say it probably won't, just because that has a separate rating scheduler. In that if you had to have surgery on it, you're not incapacitated. You're incapacitated due to the surgery. You're not incapacitated due to the symptoms, like it flared up to the point that you had an incapacitation. So just also keep that in mind, if you would. All right, moving on to defining incapacitating episodes for the rater. Okay, now this is important because this is where the medical side and the legal side might not agree. Okay, so by definition, an incapacitating episode requires bed rest prescribed by a physician. When evaluating IVDS on incapacitating episodes, there must be evidence the associated symptoms, right? The symptoms require the bed rest as prescribed by a physician, not a surgery, but the symptoms. The medical evidence of prescribed bed rest must be, now this is another one where the words they chose matter. The rater doesn't have any choice on this. You have to show it of record in the claims folder, right? So you've submitted something to us showing the bed rest prescribed or reviewed and described by an examiner completing an examination or DBQ, but it still has to be cited. Now, this is where I disagree with this because it still has to be cited somewhere. The examiner completing the DBQ cannot just do that because there's other sections here where it has to be prescribed by a physician and treatment by a physician. So this also must be true. This is where the manual and the CFR upset me because the rater has to thread the needle. So if I just went off this statement here and the examiner checked the box, I could still get an error because I can't cite where a physician prescribed it and where treatment by that physician is shown. So, and same thing. Yeah. So, I mean, this is going to be like, I know some people say that I nitpick the rules, but this is the way the raters have to behave. So this is why I said earlier that the BVA sometimes is a better fit for this because we have rules that contradict themselves. So we have to find the strictest rule and adhere to it. I know it's stupid, guys, but it's just the way that things behave. Because if you did a higher level review on this and you said, well, wait a minute, right here it says this, the DRO can go, well, yes, but can you show us where you're prescribed by a physician? How did that examiner make that determination? Evidenced by what? And you would lose the higher level review most of the time. I can't guarantee what they would do, but you should lose the higher level review because you have to have it prescribed by a physician, and this person cannot prescribe those medications or that particular intervention. If the records do not adequately document prescribed bed rest, use the general rating formula. See, it even contradicts itself right here, guys. It contradicts itself right here. So even though The examiner completing the examination or DBQ. They described it, they checked the box. Well, right here, this overrules that and says that I have to have, you know, adequate prescribed bed rest, a document showing, it has to document. I have to then, if that's the case and we can't uh, adequately document it, then we have to use the general rating formula, which means that you can't use this rating formula if we can't adequately document the prescribed bed rest, right? So that would mean that your radiculopathy would be separately granted. But if you're somebody that has this to be true right here for your neck and back, I can see advantages to wanting to have the IVDS rating formula used. So if you're doing a private DBQ, or if you're, like, even if you're organizing your evidence, you need to make sure that you are, adequately showing and documenting the prescribed bed rest. You have to have your doctor say that I am prescribing you bed rest for your IVDS flare up or whatever. I just, it weirds me out sometimes. Um, so this second thing, the and section here. So what we would do if you didn't adequately show us the prescribed bed rest is what's supposed to happen is we use the general rating formula and then we send you we send a code sheet note to the authorizer, and the authorizer is supposed to send you a letter telling you to submit medical evidence documenting the periods of incapacitating episodes requiring bed rest prescribed by a physician. And once you do that on a new claim, we will potentially backdate you to this claim type thing. So I don't know. It's a big headache if you don't front load your claim by doing this particular thing. This is what makes IVDS unique. It's what makes IVDS a pain in the butt sometimes, not only for the doctor, not only for the rater, but also for the veteran in how their evidence collection. Now, I wanted to end this video. I'm trying to keep it short, but it's not short, with an example. Sorry, the dogs went crazy. So through the power of editing, we're going to start up again and say that this manual reference right here provides examples of how IVDS would be evaluated by the rater. So the situation is the veteran's IVDS is being evaluated. I mean, awesome description. The limitation of motion, that's what LOM is, warrants a 20% evaluation under the general rating formula for diseases or injuries of the spine. The veteran presents during the examination with mild radiculopathy of the left lower extremity, warranting 10% evaluation as a neurological complication. CFRs under 8520, the sciatic nerve. So, and medical evidence shows incapacitating episodes requiring bed rest prescribed by a physician of 4 weeks duration over the past 12 months, which would result in a 40% evaluation. So you see how they separately evaluated each one to see what it would be. So 20 plus 10 would be rounded to 30. The 40% overall combined would give them 40. So we are supposed to assign a 40% evaluation. It seems rather correct, right? Like, it seems easy to do. The problem with this sometimes is there's a few moving parts with this, and newer raters will not do this second evaluation because it's rare that somebody has the incapacitating episodes, or that they've diagnosed it medically with the prescription to the point that we can ever use this one. So what you'll find is raters being complacent. They don't do the second review here. You have to keep them honest. Okay. You've got to keep them honest. But evaluating IVDS using incapacitated results in the highest evaluation. I mean, yeah, that's the explanation. So the explanation is there. But anyway, so this is IVDS, how it is rated, how it is different, and some of the uniqueness to it. Now, if you're a veteran that has IVDS and you have been historically rated and you've had your radiculopathy separately granted, and you're somebody that has legitimate incapacitating episodes, it might behoove you to go back and just take this time to review to see if your situation and or circumstances meet any of these requirements. If so, then you might want to think about potentially doing an increase. If your radiculopathy, right? Like if your spine and the radiculopathy don't add up to what you saw back here, like maybe you're 10 and 10, but you have so many incapacitated episodes that you would be 40. Well, this is something for you guys to consider. But that's about all I got for you on this one. I'd like to thank everybody for subscribing. We're at 4,850, I think, is where we're at. So we are just racing up to that 5K mark on the subscribers. If you're somebody that isn't subscribed, please like and subscribe if you like the videos. I'd appreciate it. I mean, we're trying to get the message out here to help veterans get adequately rated, to help educate you guys so you're at the VSR and or rater level of comprehension and understanding, so that way you don't need to rely on somebody else. You can do it yourself because you understand it. And I'd also like to thank all of the VSR and Raider members at either level. I don't care. You guys' support is keeping me going here, and keeping the chair is on actual order. It's going to be a little while to get, but thank you guys for all your support. I appreciate it. That's about all I got for you right now from for Raider HQ. I'd like to thank the Raider Nation. I'm gonna use that. They coined that yesterday, so I'd like to thank all the Raider Nation for you know supporting the channel and just keeping me motivated, guys. But that's about all I got for you right now. Thank you. Raider out.